The Chinese dragon is raising its head and challenging the powers to be. In the Southeast Asian region, it is challenging India and pinpricking it continuously. And in the South China Sea, it is troubling Japan. And in the Pacific, it is causing a threat to Australia. And also, it is challenging US as a superpower. So, though the aim is not to contain China, the Quad or the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue was created on the sidelines of the Asean, that is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. The Quad is basically an informal and strategic forum consisting of India, Japan, US and Australia. The main aim is to have a free, open and prosperous Indo-Pacific region. The agendas are basically met by informal and formal summits and meetings, and by information exchanges and military exercises of all the member countries, like the Malabar exercises. This was basically the brainchild of the former Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe. The origin of this forum can be tracked post-tsunami, when the havoc was tried to be neutralized and life brought back to normal. In this, Japan and India took part voluntarily because the damages had to be contained. Australia also willingly participated, and USA was of help during this period. Also, post-COVID, the COVID management was done by these nations in a cohesive manner, and the Malabar exercises, in which naval drills were carried out by US, India and Japan in the Indo-Pacific region and also toward the South China Sea. Therefore, China thought it to be a means of containing it, but the Quad had a bigger aim, and the aim is basically not to contain China, but the underlining is to basically warn China not to rear its head and keep this zone free for trade, because majority of the trade is through this region going on to the Western world. When China felt threatened, it put political pressure on Australia, and after its formulation in 2007, Australia withdrew its membership in 2008, and since then the Quad has been a waxy-wane forum which did not have a fructuous scope, or nothing major came out of it. But during the COVID, when China was at the center of the eye for the COVID to have become a pandemic, and there were inquiries against it, this forum again got together and grew in strength. And these four countries, especially India, assisted the world in a very big and major way for containing the virus, and also for making of the vaccination, which was given out to the world and also to the developing nations, the third world nations, for getting this virus back into control. The core objective of the Quad is basically to have a rules-based order, freedom of navigation and a liberal trading system, and an alternating debt financing system for the nations in the Indo-Pacific, so that there is a order and trade can grow cumulatively for these nations. As I have told, the Indo-Pacific is a major trading route for the Eastern and the Western world, and a link between these two. So, to keep it free of any threats is a major concern, and the Quad has taken up the agenda for doing this. After this, when Australia saw that the Quad is becoming a very forceful forum, it joined back in 2010 and became part of this forum. It was basically in 2012 when the idea of Asia's democratic security diamond was created, which comprised of US, India, Japan and Australia, and the basic agenda or the core agenda of Quad was fructified and it was put into action effectively. Following this, in 2017, the talks took place in Philippines and the agendas were enhanced, and in 2021 Joe Biden had a virtual summit. The scope was enhanced to climate crisis, conduct of emerging technologies and giving enhancement to startups. Initiatives of space and cyber security were taken up, and also next generation talents were discussed. Then there was a problem of semiconductors, and the logistics for the semiconductors was also discussed and was made to be a part of the agenda, and this was included in the scope of Quad. And it was decided in this 2021 meet to have a proper supply chain for these Quad countries and also a flow to give the items required for semiconductors to other nations also, so that there is a uniform logistic chain for these items world across. This basically gives the Indian electronic industry a big boost, because our country is one of the major manufacturers and suppliers of semiconductors, and we will benefit in a big way if this supply chain is made uniform across the world and the logistic chain is put into place. Here it is important to note that China feels threatened by the scope of the Quad getting fructified and tries to claim the complete disputed South China Sea, though the Taiwan, the Philippines, Brunei, Malaysia and Vietnam all claim part to it. Beijing has made artificial islands and military establishments in the South China Sea, and it is getting into territorial disputes with Japan in the East China Sea. Initially, China had opposed the formation of the Quad and had put political pressure on Australia, and Australia had stepped out of it. But when Australia felt the need and saw the importance of Quad, it got back into the forum. In 2018, the Chinese Foreign Minister had referred to Quad as a headline-grabbing idea. Now with the Quad, how does India benefit? India basically benefits because it has been doing military drills in the form of the Malabar exercises with Japan and US. So in case of any problems by China on its frontiers, which has been a very common feature, we can accept or expect Japan and the US to either help us militarily or diplomatically try to quash these confrontations and be pro-Indian in our stand and get us out of the soup. Also, India benefits industrially because of the semiconductors, and also if the Indo-Pacific trade route is kept open, we also benefit with our economy going up. Now, what are the interests of US in the Quad? With US coordinating with Australia, Japan and India, the Pacific is kept free and majority of the trading links is through this, and the West is basically connected by means of the Pacific. So America benefits immensely out of it, and as China is trying to downplay the authority of the US, the Americans have the support of India, Japan, the countries in the Southeast Asia and also Australia. In COVID management also, the US benefits from countries like India and can take up its stand against China. Japan basically benefits because it gets military support and economic support in the East China Sea, where Japan and China are having territorial disputes. So this coalition will help Japan immensely to downplay China's authority in this area. The latest meet of the Quad took place on the sidelines of the G7 meeting in May 23, and the meeting of 24 is going to be held in India as announced by our Prime Minister. So Quad is basically a forum which is holistic in nature, and it aims at keeping the Indo-Pacific free, and the underlying aim of this is to downplay China's authority in the world. So friends, keep listening to us and subscribe to this channel for knowing more about army related incidents and also general knowledge events. Jai Hind.